Hello and welcome to the fourth and final pre-show episode of For Every Response, sponsored by MSA Safety. I'm Catherine Levin, editor of Emergency Services Times, and I also look after the content for the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show. We will be opening the doors at 9 a.m. on 17th of September, so I'm delighted to bring you this special West Midlands episode to get you in the mood for your visit to the NEC in Birmingham. West Midlands Fire Service has been a huge supporter of the show over the years, and you can see their teams demonstrating the range of skills they need to respond to emergencies. For this episode, I have a long chat with the new chief, Simon Tuhill, to find out what it's like to run a large metropolitan fire service and step up to the top job. Before we hear that, I've got a treat for you. Inspired by Joe Lycett and his trip to the US to create the United States of Birmingham, I decided to visit Birmingham, England, to see two of our new exhibitors and find out why they've decided to join us at the NEC. First up, Worcestershire Medal Service. Sales manager Dave Andrews gave me a tour of the factory in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham, where they make the Elizabeth emblem. I wrote about my visit for Emergency Services Times, where you can see some great photos and a video of the production of the emblem in action. Listen now as Dave tells me more about the company and corrects me on my terminology as I learn about medal making in the West Midlands.
Worcestershire medals are well known within the military side of the business, but not so much the emergency services. So we decided that we needed to do a bit of flag waving, so to speak, and where better to start than at the Emergency Services Show at the NEC, which is right on our doorstep.
What was really good for me was I got to come and see you in your factory in Birmingham, and I wrote about it so people can read about that on the website. I just wanted to ask you how important it is for you to retain manufacturing processes here in the UK. We've got this factory, it's been there since 1910, so perhaps you could tell us a little bit about
that. All of our military defence medals are manufactured in our factory in Birmingham, which you visited and witnessed. This means that we totally control the quality and specification of all our medals. Plus, it's just nice having a base for manufacturing in the UK, as with world politics, etc., you just don't know what's around the corner.
And having seen the factory, I was quite taken back by how many people were doing very, very precise processes in terms of to soldering little pieces of metal to create the bar for the ribbon to go on. And I just wondered, if there's something special about the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham, the whole street where you kind of walk along, all these jewellery shops and this amazing clock, and there you are in your factory making these very special medals. What is it that brings people to be part of your company and do those very important processes to create these special medals?
Well, as you actually saw the Jewellery Quarter, it's a hive of activity. All the skills and services required to make jewellery, badges, insignia, etc., is in the Jewellery Quarter. It's the place to be.
You started off your career as a die maker. Now, I never heard that term before. You said you've been in the industry 40 years, but not always with Worcestershire Medal Service. Could you tell us a little bit about what a die maker is and what brought you into the industry all those years ago?
Right. First of all, I'm going to correct you, Catherine. It's not a die maker. It's a die sinker. A die sinker is a die sinker is a person who makes the die or mould that a badge or medal is struck from, which you saw in the process on your little video on the article you already done. I was a die sinker for about 15 years, would you believe? Worked my way from an apprentice right up to a foreman die sinker. And I looked after a group of 4 die sinkers at one stage. And then at a previous company, I got really friendly with a sales director there who decided that I could do a job in sales. And they put me in charge of their police accounts, and the rest is history. Die sinking was enjoyable, but obviously my calling was sales. It's a very technical job, a die sinker. It's a 5-year apprenticeship involving a lot of work with a machine and with finishing by hand, with polishing, etc., getting the levels to a badge. it's quite an intricate job that needs a good eye as well for detail. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but I think I'm better off in sales.
So there's plenty of dies left there, because when I visited the factory, there was rows and rows of them on these shelves. So presumably you didn't make all of those. Those have just come from decades worth of dies.
There's probably a good chance that my father made a few of them, because my father was a die sinker as well.
Oh, really? Family industry.
Yeah,
how interesting.
He was a die sinker for over 50 years.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So to make the Elizabeth emblem, which is the reason that I wanted to come and see you, that doesn't have a die, or does it? Because you corrected me in language. I had to refer to it as a medal, which I am told it is not a medal, it is an emblem. So does that mean correct. It doesn't have a die? So let's get into the detail here.
It still has a die with the design on which the emblem is struck out of. If you go back to your little video that you took, you'll see the die actually in the press being struck, and then the imprint of the badge comes out of that. So yeah, for every medal or badge, etc., it needs a die.
Okay, so I've skipped ahead and gone straight into the Elizabeth emblem. And those who are listening to this, who haven't read my article where I came and visited you and spoke about the Elizabeth emblem, could you give us a quick introduction to what it is and what it means for your company to be the ones that are making the emblem?
Right, the emblem is an awarded to relatives and spouses of people who have died in service for the emergency services. It's always nice to get awarded with a contract like this. We manufacture some very famous awards. This is another very important one, with some very deserved recipients. We're very proud of the manufacturing the Elizabeth emblem.
Dave says they hope to have some Elizabeth emblems at the show so that visitors can see them up close, just like I did on my visit. You can also expect to see police insignia, cap badges, helmet plates, and warrant card holders. They also do medal mounting. You can visit Dave and the team on stand F154. Moving on to my second visit during my trip to Birmingham, I want to introduce you to Eurox, a family-run business operating in the Smethwick area of the city. Like Worcestershire Medal Service, Eurox is a first-time exhibitor. I visited their offices and stores to chat about why they are now supplying protective gear to police forces and the innovation they bring to this important market. I spoke to Max Pallack, MD and co-founder of the business, as well as Mark Handy, who heads up tenders and compliance. The company is now on a police procurement framework to supply jackets and overtrousers. Max tells me more.
Part of our framework agreement, we will be showcasing the complete range of waterproof outer jackets for the police force and overtrousers. In addition, obviously, we also offering the same range in high visibility garments for the police, which is for all 43 forces around the country. So we'll have a complete range of everything we offer at the show.
Fantastic. So one of the reasons I came to see you in the West Midlands was to see first-time suppliers, which you are for the show. And as a family firm in the Smethwick area of Birmingham, I can see that you're sort of part of the fabric of the community. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the origins of the firm and the benefits of working alongside your family. I'll ask you, Max, to answer that one.
Yeah, basically, we've been a West Midlands-based business since the mid-'80s. It obviously started as a family business and started by myself and my mother. Started off basically making waterproof clothing back in mid-'80s. And it grew. At its heydays, we had 120 machinists here. But obviously, we had to outsource some of that lately. But we've been based very much in the Midlands and a part of the Midland thriving business, really.
And Mark, you've been with the firm, I think, a couple of years now. So
that's right, yeah.
West Mids born and bred. So you're going to be coming to the NEC, also a big part of the West Midlands. In terms of your exposure to the industry, if you come up through garments or in the area, or give us a little bit about where you come from.
Well, I've actually been in the industry for 20 years, and I moved to Eurox 2 years ago. And obviously, with being at Eurox, the one thing I have seen is innovation and the way we actually design garments. Where before, it was always built on a lot to do with price through the years, but more and more now, there's a lot more customers wanting to see garments that are more, flexible in when you wear them, the more fashionable, if more towards a high street kind of look. And the innovation that we provide is, I feel, in my experience, is one of the best in the industry. We're always trying to design new ways of presenting garments to people, how they wear it, also the fabric as well. So there's many different things that, with the garments that we're producing, that I'm seeing year after year that is getting better.
Yes, and I think having put on the jacket, there's a lovely picture of me on LinkedIn wearing the jacket. They called me PC Levin. And it was very, very soft, and it felt like it was just beautifully treated. Now, there's something about the way in which the garments are also packaged. So when I came to see you, you showed me a jacket or a garment within a paper roll, like a card, rather than a plastic bag. Do you want to talk about your innovations in terms of packaging and how you're trying to reduce your carbon footprint?
Yes, certainly. The way that we've done that is to take out a lot of the single-use packaging out of the products. And what we're doing is actually putting it into a cardboard roll, which takes out all that single-use packaging that over the years through this kind of sector builds up. And obviously, again, we've designed that ourselves, and a lot of the garments that we send out now are actually packaged in these rolls, and a lot of our clients do mention and say how great that is to receive that, because as well as helping us, it helps our clients out as well.
Max says that they are looking forward to talking to as many police forces as possible and take on feedback at the show. He is keen to stress that there are no minimum order requirements, another innovation from this West Midlands-based company. You can see Max, Mark and the team on stand M198.
This episode of the Emergency Services Times podcast is sponsored by MSA Safety, proudly supporting emergency services and first responders on the front line. At MSA Safety, protecting first responders isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We work closely with fire and rescue services across the UK to develop and deliver safety solutions designed to meet your ever-evolving needs. That includes MSA Bristol Firefighter PPE, trusted by services across the UK and beyond, shaped through years of collaboration with frontline teams. It also includes our growing investment in innovation and technology, from the connected M1 SCBA modular solution to our agile, fully managed service model that helps keep crews protected and ready to respond. But for us, safety goes beyond equipment. We believe in standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others, whether it's supporting firefighter charities, backing mental health initiatives, or showing up for community events. MSA is proud to be part of the Emergency Services family. To learn more about our work in the UK and how we're supporting first responders every step of the way, visit www.msasafety.com. With MSA Safety, when you go in, we go in with you.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from just two of our first-time exhibitors in this special West Midlands episode. Next, we get into the detail with the Chief Fire Officer of West Midlands Fire Service. Simon Tuhill joined the service earlier this year, but he started his career in London, serving in central fire stations, including North Kensington, which is very close to Grenfell Tower. He starts by talking about those 22 years he spent in the capital and his feelings about working for other services since.
I really enjoyed my career with the London Fire Brigade, attended lots and lots of significant and major incidents, including the 7/7 bombings, and shortly before I left, was involved in the response to the Grenfell Tower fire. In 2020, I moved to Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, so a service that borders the London Fire Brigade. I have to say my reflection on the move was, it was really difficult at the time, moving from 22 years of being in one fire and rescue service to another, and sort of that comfort blanket being taken away. But it's probably one of the best things I ever did in my career, actually, in terms of broadening my scope and understanding how a different fire and rescue service works. Because whilst the red fire engines are the same, so much is familiar, but so much is also done completely differently. And of course, Hertfordshire is a different governance model. They're part of a Hertfordshire County Council, which meant I explored very, very different ways of working. I stayed in Hertfordshire for 3 years before moving to Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service. Northamptonshire, slightly more rural service than both, obviously Hertfordshire and of course London. And again, a different governance model. Northamptonshire is under a police, fire and crime commissioner model. So it was an experience for me just to see the difference, the close collaboration between police and fire in Northamptonshire. And again, I think, moving services gives you the chance to experience and almost benchmark your experiences against other services. I say to colleagues in the West Midlands now, sometimes you don't understand how good you are, or indeed how much areas where we need to get better. Because if you've only worked for one fire and rescue service, you don't have the perspective. And one of the things I think I bring to the West Midlands now is the ability, a little bit, of asking the 5-year-old questions. Why do we do that? Why do we do it like that? And I accept probably a little bit sometimes annoying for colleagues when I say, well, back in my previous services, we did it this way. And occasionally I might get an eye roll for that, I guess. But I do it with the sort of the best of intentions in terms of trying to bring the best of all of those three fire and rescue services into the West Midlands and my experience across all of them. And the comparison between them, clearly the West Midlands, very, very urban service, a massively complex built environment. So very similar to the London Fire Brigade in that respect. And, in my time in London, when I served in, central London boroughs such as Brent, Camden and Southwark, dealing with some of those socioeconomic challenges, some of the countries and in the West Midlands, regions' most deprived areas, really enjoy that, find it really stimulating, engaging with, such diverse communities, because I think it's where we really add value as a fire and rescue service. And, the responsibility of looking after, nearly 2,000 staff and 2.9 million, people who live in the West Midlands, and all of the people who, work here and move through the conurbation, is something that I feel deeply privileged to undertake every day.
Yeah, so you're joining as the chief and bringing all of that experience with you, the perspective you talk about that comes from being in the capital's fire service, 22 years, Hertfordshire County Service, Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner Service, and now you're in a service where they have a best value inspection going on governance. You've had a chief unfortunately die in service, and then you've been through a different chief who came from outside of the service, and here you are now leading from the front. So what all of that experience that you've just described, how does that help you come to the West Midlands and lead an organisation which has, to be fair, been through a very difficult time?
Yeah, certainly the service has been through a tough time over the last 18 months. But my focus in joining and in the nearly 8 months that I've been here has been, one of my key goals has been to bring some stability. And certainly my reflection is that our key delivery to the people of the West Midlands, the public, that hasn't wavered over the last 18 months. We have 1,900 members of staff doing remarkable things every day, and that hasn't changed. And certainly one of my key ways of leading is to understand organisational culture and understand our staff. In the 8 months I've been here, I've now visited, I think it's 32 fire stations out of our 38, as well as numerous other team visits, our protection teams, our prevention teams, our response teams, to understand and speak to the staff. And what I get from that is a deep bond with the West Midlands, and the staff really care about the communities they serve. And that's been quite moving, actually. Some of the stories I've heard, and some of the things that our staff tell us in terms of how they engage with the public it's a real privilege to listen to. And I want to build on that. I want us to build on that. And for me, understanding the culture is important, because the West Midlands, of course, isn't, although we are the West Midlands and we are West Midlands Fire Service, it's we're very different in terms of, it's made up of several different cities and towns. And so, the experience I get in the Black Country in Wolverhampton is very different to the experience I get when I speak to staff in Coventry. And when we bind that all together as West Midlands Fire Service, accepting that, it's a very different conurbation. And I suppose the other thing around, leadership for me is making sure we invest in the areas that are really important. So since I've been here, we've just rolled out a brand new training model. It's like a centralised training model. The service invested £600,000 in that, in terms of delivering new operational training to our staff. We've invested £500,000 in developing a new incident command training suite, state of the art, to make sure our incident commanders are given the best input. And both of those investments link to firefighter safety out there when they're responding to incidents. The next phase for us is looking at our leadership and management training. Really pleased that we've done an internal review of that, and we're going to start to roll out enhanced leadership and management training to all of our staff. And then from a sort of an operational capability, we have 10 new water module 2 rescue stations across the region. Again, as a direct result of looking at the data and examining the type of incidents that the West Midlands is starting to respond to, we now have that capability out there, keeping people safe. And from a capital point of view, really pleased, in the 8 months I've been here, we're now out to tender for 11 new fire engines, so standard fire engines, 3 new technical rescue units. We'll be placing an order later this year for our 2 new aerial appliances and prime mover units. So in the 8 months I've been here, yes, stability, but also let's move the service forward. Let's start to invest. Let's make sure we continue to prioritise things like firefighter safety.
Yeah, that is quite a list you've gone through there. Lots and lots of investment. Interesting, 500k in incident command training. Are you using virtual reality and sort of modern technology to do that?
Yes, we are. And actually, it's a bit of a blend of modern and traditional. So in our headquarters, we've got all of those immersive experiences, so we can give the incident commanders the experience of being at an incident using computer generated incidents. But equally, we've built a scale model of our command support unit, and a scale model of a fire engine that then has a screen in front of it, so we can simulate the drive to an operational incident and start to question the incident commanders on their thought processes as they proceed towards that incident. So there's a blend there of using the latest technology, but also trying to make it immersive by people feeling they're on a fire engine or on the command support unit.
And is that unusual, what you've just described in terms of a scale model? I'm not sure I've heard of that before.
Yeah, so I mean, I know certainly London Fire Brigade have sort of scale models of their command units, but I've not come across a service that has almost built a fire engine in an office that enables us to really make that training environment as realistic as possible.
Yes, and so with 11 new fire engines as well, are those just like for like replacements, just on a sort of cycle as you'd expect in any service?
Yes, as part of our capital replacement programme, 11 new Type B fire appliances, which means we can then retire some of the older ones from our fleet.
Are you looking at alternative fuels for your fire engines in terms of HVO, like in Cambridgeshire, or looking at the electric appliances that London and Scotland are trialling?
It's definitely something I think we want to keep an eye on. Our commitment around being net zero by 2040 probably relies on some of those new technologies supporting us in our operational delivery fleet. Actually, one of the interesting things is at the Emergency Services Show to look at some of that new technology and innovation, because I think at the moment we're still awaiting some of that progress. But in terms of what we do now, well, we've just invested in a fleet of new cars for our flexible duty officers, so our middle managers who respond to incidents, and they're all hybrid vehicles, plug-in hybrid vehicles. So we're already starting to look at modern technologies, and it's definitely something that we want to transition to in the future.
That is good to hear. I'm glad you've turned us to talk to the show about the show again. So we'll have over 400 suppliers and expect to see about 16,000 people through the doors over the 2 days. In the program, so I look after all of the program at the show. We have a session on drones and wildfires. Now, we've seen a very hot summer. We've seen more wildfires than we've had before. How are you evolving your response to wildfires, and do you see drones as part of that picture?
Well, I suppose as a predominantly urban fire and rescue service, we probably don't respond to as many wildfires as I know some of my colleagues do, and there's been recent incidents down in Dorset and Wiltshire, and I know in Derbyshire, that are really significant over a huge area. But nevertheless, we do actually respond and see an uptick in secondary and grass fires during the summer months. And as a more urban area, some of our grassland can be blighted by fires, which often are sadly started deliberately. We do actually use our drone capability. It's great for grass fires and wildfires, because we can then use the thermal imaging capability of those drones to enable the incident commanders to focus and target those areas where the fire is at its most intense and hottest. So over a larger area, it can be quite difficult when you're on the ground to understand the spread of the incident and also where it's moving. And so that drone technology is really important. One of my station visits recently, I joined a crew who'd responded to a grass fire in Sheldon Country Park, and we used one of our brigade response vehicles, BSVs and BRV, sorry, and they're a 4x4 Toyota Hilux, and it means it's much more nimble and agile, and it can get to areas that a traditional fire appliance can't. So it was really pleasing to see and actually be with the crew whilst they got to the area of the park where the grass fire had started. And because we can get there quicker, because the vehicle is more nimble, it then limits the damage in the first place, and they can move around the edge of the area affected in an easier way. We've had our BRV vehicles for a number of years now, and I touched on our replacement program. We're going to be replacing all of those over the next 12 months with a blended fleet of slightly larger versions and those with 4x4 capability. So if we merge that type of nimble vehicle with the ability to communicate in live time with an officer flying a drone, that state starts to give me confidence that we're fit for the future for this type of incident that we know we're going to see more of.
Yes, and that's good to hear. And it's interesting that the session at the show on drones and wildfires, actually it's two academics, and they've done some research looking at this idea of swarms of drones, giving great situational awareness across large space and potentially having payload themselves.
Yes.
So that brings me on to talk about the inevitable artificial intelligence, because that's what's driving the swarm technology. And the extent to which your service is looking at AI. We have a session at the show looking at what we're calling confident. How can the fire service become a confident user of AI? So I'm wondering, in terms of your 8 months at West Midlands, how much have you been talking about AI and how it can help your service improve?
Well, yes, we have. My head of digital data and technology is a real advocate of AI in terms of what it can mean for us, and I'm squarely behind him. I've always supported, technology to make a difference to public safety, because ultimately that's what we're here for. And I've been in the fire and rescue service long enough that 28 years ago, there wasn't even a computer on a fire station then, and the way we understood risk was just by having experience of the station ground you worked on to kind of know the areas where fires might happen or where vulnerable people might be. And you kind of knew just because you had experience. Well, we don't need to do that anymore. We now have such rich data sets that can forecast where our incidents will take place, whether that's road traffic collisions, domestic fires, commercial fires. or special services. We have such a rich data set. And so the next step for me is then to use AI to help us target that. So in the West Midlands, we've just published our new AI policy, which puts in safeguards around the use of AI, but then is trying to explore the creation of an AI governance board to think about those areas where we can better use it. And, you know, that's around both understanding risk. So because it can analyze data really, really quickly, it can support sort of faster evidence-based decisions that perhaps would have taken us months to analyze the data. We can also use it in terms of progression of, you know, operational incidents. You know, our new mobilizing system, which is going live early next year, will shortly after it going live have an AI tool that enables us to deaden the background noise when a caller is making a 999 call. So you can imagine sometimes when someone rings 999, it can be quite a noisy environment, either because there's, you know, vehicles or people panicking or, you know, things in the background. And that can mean our control operators have to ask for the address perhaps 3 or 4 times. Well, if we can deaden the background noise by using AI and we only have to ask once, that might, shave off 20 seconds for us to understand where the operational incident is to mobilize resources. And for a service where every second matters, you know, that 20 seconds can make a real difference to how quickly we can get assets to a location that really needs it. So, you know, there is a real world impact of using things like AI on public safety. And, you know, in the background, you know, there are, of course, other areas we can use AI around, you know, dealing with some of that sort of more repetitive collation of data, which means we can then use our staff for better analysis and insight. And of course, how people interact with the fire and rescue service. You know, can we build, you know, digital assistants and chatbots that give tailored fire safety advice both to the public and to businesses when they're asking us questions, which then free up, you know, our highly skilled inspecting officers to deal with really complex cases rather than lower level queries. So I think there's a real opportunity for the sector as a whole to explore AI and aid us in the future.
Yes, that's again a great list of things that you're doing then, thinking about, and also things that I hear from police as well and ambulance around policy and guardrails and so forth. Interesting, you're looking at kind of hotspot type approaches, you know, where should you be putting your resources in the prevention space as well. I'm interested in what you said about the control room though. So have you already secured the supplier of your control software? Who is that?
It's Motorola.
Okay, so Motorola are providing this facility to deaden the background noise. Do you know if that's been rolled out elsewhere? Are you a first user of that?
I don't know. I think speaking to colleagues from Motorola and our teams, this is something they're just developing now, and certainly Motorola have got a real drive to start to think about innovation like that. What other AI innovations can we use in fire control to assist our control operators?
Yes, and certainly, as you say, shaving off seconds of time at that very important start of the incident, that interaction with 999 is going to make a big difference in terms of response time. So very interesting to track the data on that and see how that evolves in the future. Motorola are at the show, so you'll be able to go and have a chat with them and see what else they're doing. So that's really, really interesting to look at AI. There's a lot going on there. I want us now to look at contaminants. So a very different space. We've done a lot with John Lord and with Brett Egan-Bryars last year. We had a whole stage dedicated to firefighter contaminants and looking at the PPE contracts to make sure that kit is better for firefighters. So in terms of what your service is doing, how are you reducing the risks to your firefighters?
I mean, it's another one of our key work streams in terms of firefighter safety. And we know this is an emerging risk for us and something that I think has been just a change in how people view contamination across the whole of the sector. And again, I reflect back, you know, to my career when, you know, all those years ago, it was almost a badge of honor to have dirty equipment and kit because it meant that you were busy, and that cultural shift into now seeing that as a bad thing has been quite rapid, actually, and I'm super proud of it. I mentioned before about going out and doing my station visits. One of the things whenever I go to one of my fire stations is to go and look in the PPE storeroom, and I always walk in there. And if it smells of fire, then I know we're not doing it right. And I'm super pleased actually that whenever I walk in them now, they don't, because the crews take it really seriously. They double bag up their kit at operational instance. They have gloves and cleaning equipment to clean down the BA sets before they go back onto the fire engines. So part of this work is that cultural shift, the expectation in us as staff to take it seriously and culturally behave differently. But there is, of course, those other parts of work that require investment. So how we store equipment on the fire engine, how we clean things, what our vehicles look like, and of course what our fire stations look like. And one of our commitments around contamination is that we want to invest in the West Midlands, in our capital, in our fire stations, to make sure that they are fit for the future. I was reading before, just prior to our chat, that the NFCC has identified that the removal of the capital grants from fire and rescue, I think around about 11 years ago, amounts to around, for the whole sector, £1 billion less that we've had to spend on our capital, on our buildings and our fire engines. Now, my very, very rough maths, and it wouldn't quite work out this way, means that over that period, I'd have had £800,000 extra to spend on every single one of my fire stations. And that would go a long way to making the changes we need to our estates, some of which were, some of my fire stations were built in the 1930s when, obviously contamination wasn't a thing. And even the more modern ones built in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, it just wasn't a thing. And what I want to be able to do is invest in the estate to make sure we have clean routes in, equipment drop-offs, showers, almost red, amber and green zones in our fire stations. But I need the capital funding to invest in that, and the whole sector does. So, we are taking contaminants really seriously. We have a dedicated project group that's looking at some of the really early changes we can put in place. And then, as part of our estate's investment plan, what the longer term bit of work looks like in terms of changing our buildings to make sure they're fit for the future.
Yes, that phrase, the badge of honour, I've heard it many times before about that if you are grubby, then you've clearly done a good job. Although I am interested that you're now poking around in cupboards at stations. So hopefully they've all looked at them and sorted out before you get there. So good work going on there. And you're right, in terms of being able to make fire stations the modern workplaces that they should be, takes money. I mean, I went to West Sussex's Platinum House, brand new fire station, which showed, how the decon system of going from red to amber to green, to never take the dirt into the working space. It's amazing what you can do, but it does take a lot of money. So will you be lobbying government to put the capital back into your budgets? Is that the plan?
Absolutely, yeah, Catherine, absolutely. And you're right. Those, West Sussex is one of those models of how we might look to build out our new estates. And it isn't just about contamination. Actually, we mentioned before around sustainability. If I want my fire stations to be sustainable, if I want West Midlands Fire Service to move towards its net zero goal, I need to be able to invest that as a capital investment in things like EV charging points, both for, the public to be able to charge vehicles, but also us to be able to charge fire engines and other assets. If we want to put photovoltaic cells on the roof, we need to be able to invest in our estates. And then the third prong of the capital investment in our estates is around the dignity for our staff. Again, many of our fire stations were built before women joined the fire and rescue service, and to make sure that every single one of my fire stations is fit, so that every single member of staff has feels the dignity of being able to get changed in a secure environment and have an area they can get cleaned and washed in, is going to take investment. So absolutely, part of my job as the Chief Fire Officer is to lobby for more capital investment for West Midlands and actually the whole of the fire and rescue service. And I know that's something that the NFCC have really been pushing quite strongly recently, and with my full support. And my separate job, of course, is then to speak to local politicians, both our elected councillors, but also all of the 24 MPs that we have in the West Midlands to make the case to them about, how we need some more investment in the fire and rescue service, especially when it comes to capital.
Yeah. So in terms of that green roofs and photovoltaic cells and so forth, part of that can come from the public sector decarbonisation fund, but I'm not sure how much money is left in that pot. In terms of your politicians, I'm wondering, is the best value inspection I referred to at the beginning of this interview a place where you can talk about money and funding? Does it come into the remit of that?
The best value terms of reference has been published. That's now live on the MHCLG website. And they are quite broad ranging and link to, the best value duties that a fire and rescue service has under the Local Government Act. I've met with the chair, and I have actually met with Fenella Morris Casey, who's the lead inspector. I really look forward to working with Fenella actually as the inspection progresses. I think everyone in the service welcomes a best value inspection as a chance to learn. I will say this always about any service I work in, is around self-awareness. We're always on a continual journey of improvement. I accept that, but as long as we know where we are trying to improve, I think that's where I want to be. So my hope on this is that the best value inspection doesn't reflect back things to us, things that we don't already know and things that we're already working on. I don't underestimate though, the impact of a best value inspection on an organisation that's relatively small in local government terms. The inspection, is going to be around about 8 or 9 months and very in depth. And at the same time, I obviously have to maintain business as usual in terms of all of our response, prevention and protection activities, and progress with all the change and transformation initiatives that we've talked about in terms of capital programs, changes to vehicles, and looking at the future of the service when we want to make ourselves sort of fit for the next 20 years. And I guess the other part around best value is, we've done a lot of work already with the Local Government Association, the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. We have our new Corporate Governance Improvement Board that's chaired independently by Zoe Billingham, who was a former HMI CFRS inspector. I'm actually really pleased at the robust work plan we have in terms of, improvement around our governance to make sure it is fit for the future. I, as the Chief Fire Officer, I want a positive and constructive working relationship with the Fire Authority. I have that, and I also want to be held to account by them. That's a key role of the Fire Authority, holding me to scrutiny and account on behalf of the people of the West Midlands.
You can see Simon and his team at the Emergency Services show, plus a special appearance by Giddy, their fire investigation dog, who joins us with handler Alex Dorr in the community hub on the 17th of September. So that's it for this mini-series. I hope you've enjoyed our new magazine-style format and our whistle-stop tour around what you can expect to see at the shows. Thanks to my guests, Simon Tuhill, Dave Andrews, Max Pallock and Mark Handy for taking time to talk to me. You can see all of them at the show. And this year, we decided we like doing podcasts so much that we've built our own studio on the show floor. In a first for us, we will be recording new podcast episodes at the show in the EST studios, which is sponsored by MSA Safety. You can find me, Lana, Caitlin and James in the studio based on stand K240, right near the doors to the outside space. We'll be interviewing people throughout the show. We are perfectly placed for you to drop by, listen in using our new silent disco headphones. I used these headphones for the first time recently, and I have to say I'm a big fan. You are in for a treat. I'm also able to reveal that Pete Wakefield will be hosting special show episodes of the Firefighters podcast using our studio, so do come along and see him in action. And that just leaves me to say a huge thanks to MSA Safety for sponsoring the pod, and to Tom Sidgen, as ever, for expertly producing this episode. Make sure you're subscribed on your favourite pod platform and be the first to hear new episodes of For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times.